What up, dude bros? I'm Frank. This is a video review of two new ball launchers by Dart Zone, the Liberator and the Sentry. The Sentry is a spring-powered pistol with a 6-round capacity, very comparable to the Chronos. The Liberator is a pump-action shotgun with a 10-round internal capacity, which is pretty cool. So let's get into the review. Included with the Sentry is the blaster, balls, and the instructions. Included with the Liberator is the blaster, balls, color indicators, and the instructions. This is a video review of both blasters, but I'll start out with the Sentry. External overview of the Sentry, starting up at the front. No barrel nozzle. This is not a Nerf brand blaster, plus it shoots balls, so of course that wouldn't make any sense. Below the nozzle is a rail. This is not an N-Strike rail, but it's somewhat compatible with attachments. It's not the same design, but it's somewhat compatible, so you can put on your N-Strike attachment. So if you want to put a red dot underneath the blaster, or like a tack light or something like that, it's pretty rattly, but it's somewhat compatible. That's the rail. Up top we have the loading port. This blaster has an internal magazine and has a capacity of 6 balls. To open, you click the little notch right here and then open up on the flap, and that exposes the loading port right here. Capacity is 6 balls, and to load you can just push them on in there. The Dart Zone balls are included with the blaster, but this is compatible with rival rounds, and you can use the included balls in Nerf rival blasters. I haven't seen a loading port exactly like this, but it's nice. It's not quite like loading a Chronos, it's a little different. And when you load in 6 balls, then you can shut this hinged little flap and it clicks into place. Moving back, this blaster is spring powered. This gray piece is the priming handle to prime, pull back and push forward. And that enables you to fire once. The prime action is pretty smooth and the draw weight is surprisingly light, but this has a very low chrono average compared to Nerf Rival, so that might explain that. And at the back of the priming handle, we have an unjamming button. After you prime the Sentry, you're not able to prime it again. Sometimes you have to clear out a jam. So you press that button to override that lock so you're able to prime it again. A very similar button is present in the Nerf Rival Chronos, and it allows you to shotgun load to fire 2 at once. That's kind of what they're going for, but you can't really shotgun load with this blaster. It's just too weak. So you'll only want to use that to actually unjam the blaster, but I didn't have any jams or malfunctions when using this blaster. Down to the trigger system, which is a little new. I have not quite seen this. This looks like a rev trigger, but it's not. It's actually the trigger safety, so you have to press this in order to pull the main trigger. It's like a grip safety on a 1911. It's super weird. I've never seen this on a Nerf blaster. So this blaster's primed. It doesn't have a safety, but if I'm pulling on the trigger, it won't fire. I have to push down this essentially rev trigger, and then I'm able to fire. So that's a safety that you have to hold down every time you shoot, and it makes the ergonomics a little weird. It's not really my taste. Down to the grip, this kind of looks like a grip out of like a laser gun out of a sci-fi film. I don't like it. It's not very comfortable, but it would be most comfortable for a smaller hand. The butt plate at the very bottom of the grip is just a little fat, so it stops my hand from rolling over on the grip, so it's a little cramping. It's not very comfortable for a big hand. And at the bottom of a grip, we have a sling or a lanyard mount. That's the external overview of the Sentry. Now an external overview of the Liberator. This is a pump-action shotgun with an internal magazine that holds 10 balls. External overview starting up at the front. Of course, there's no N-Strike barrel lug, but you have a sling mount up here and a corresponding rear one here. Up top, there is a tactical rail that is somewhat compatible with N-Strike attachments. So you can mount your Nerf attachments, but they just don't really stop. They don't lock into place because they don't have those little gaps or the little N-Strike tooths to catch the attachment. So it can slide somewhat freely, but you know, it's on there and that's pretty cool. They can't infringe on the Hasbro patent, and that's why it's compatible, but not fully, I guess. But it works, so if you want to put a sniper scope or a red dot on your shotgun, you can. This blaster is spring powered. This gray piece is the priming handle. To prime, you pull back and push forward. The prime is a pretty smooth action, but it's very light, just like the Sentry, but this is also extremely underpowered compared to Nerf Rival, so it's easier to prime, it just doesn't shoot as fast. And the coolest feature about this blaster is underneath the priming handle. Right here. This is how you load the blaster. You prime back the handle and you leave it rear, and then you open this little flap. And in this little slot, you can get the balls and just shove them in there, and it's a tube magazine that runs underneath the blaster right here. There's this interesting little one-way flap at the front here to prevent the balls from like springing out at you when you're trying to load in more. And again, the magazine capacity is 10 balls. After you load it up, you can shut the little flap, return the priming handle, and now you're ready to go. Moving on, there's a little green plate right here and right here that can be rotated out with different colors, like other Dart Zone blasters of the past. So if you want to indicate teams, you can flip out what color you are, or more realistically, if you just like a color and you want it on your blaster, you can flip it out with the little included color panels. Moving back, there's another sling mount here, and now to the grip. The trigger pull is pretty normal. This blaster does not have slam fire. The trigger release is standard, but this has a similar trigger safety as the Sentry, or pretty much the same system. You have to push down on this lower trigger, sort of like a rev trigger. That's what it feels like to me. And the blaster doesn't fire unless you have that depressed, like a 1911 backstrap safety. It's a little uncomfortable, honestly. I personally don't think safeties are that big a deal. I don't really activate them on my rival blasters unless they're going into storage. And that's just on the electronic blasters. Make sure the rev switches don't get bumped by other blasters as things shift. So I do find it kind of annoying that I have to press that down every time I fire, but that's how it works. And the grip is small, it's a little awkward, but this blaster is very light in general, so it's not uncomfortable. The ergonomics are pretty cool, and it's like a shorty shotgun. That's what they're going for. So it's not my favorite, but it works. That is an external overview of the Liberator. Let's see both blasters fire. Starting with the included dart zone balls. Now shooting a few yellow Nerf rival rounds. Starting with the included dart zone orange balls. Now shooting a few yellow Nerf rival rounds. Operating both blasters was pretty fun most of the time. I had a few feeding issues with both of the blasters. I feel like both of the magazine springs need to be stronger. I had quite a few dry fires where I primed, I was loaded, but the magazine spring wasn't strong enough to inject the ball into the chamber to actually fire. So I went through the motion, I pulled the trigger, and it dry fired, and the dart was just still stuck in the magazine. Other than those issues, I didn't have any jams or malfunctions. And now to the deal breaker, I put both of these blasters up on my chronograph. First I tested the Sentry, and with dart zone balls, I achieved an average velocity of 66 feet per second. Then tested with rival rounds and achieved 65 FPS as an average. Then I put up the Liberator, and with dart zone balls I achieved an average velocity of 71 feet per second, and with rival rounds 73 feet per second, which is an okay velocity for a dart blaster, but considerably less than any rival blaster on the market right now. Rival blasters tend to shoot between 90 and 100 FPS. These shoot slower than normal dart guns, which is really weird coming from Dart Zone, which has some of the fastest shooting dart blasters on the market without modification. Their dart guns shoot over 80 FPS, and then they make rival blasters and they make them shoot slower than the dart blasters. I don't understand what they're trying here. You get into rival to shoot harder and faster and to go a little bit more hardcore than normal dart blasters. This is a step in the wrong direction, honestly. So that's the objective information I'll provide on both of these blasters. Now to my personal opinion, starting out with the Sentry. Unfortunately, I cannot recommend anybody purchase this blaster. The rival Chronos is objectively superior in every way, except for capacity, 5 versus 6, which isn't a big deal considering everything else you're sacrificing. Primarily, firing velocity. 66 FPS is just way too slow in a rival game. That's pretty slow for a primary being in a dart war, but in rival, you'll just get destroyed. You play with rival blasters instead of dart blasters to shoot faster, harder, to go further with more precision. This blaster just doesn't do well at all. I had a few feeding issues, which I already discussed. The magazine spring just seems a little weak, and on that note, the primary spring seems to be too weak on both blasters. I feel like they just put in the wrong springs. It's a pretty cool concept. I like the loading port. It's kind of catchy, but it's a direct competitor to the rival Chronos, and the Chronos is just way, way better. It's more refined, it shoots harder. It might be more expensive, but I think it's worth it. So in my professional opinion, I would not recommend you purchase the Sentry. Now to the Liberator. My personal opinion, it was fun to use because it's a sawed-off shotgun, but I can't recommend this to any performance nerfers. Again, for the same reasons. If you're shooting Nerf rival rounds, it's much faster. It's a different gameplay than normal dart blasters. This just shoots way too slow to be competitive in even a dart war, let alone a rival war. I had way more feeding issues with this blaster because I can actually feel the tension and the drag on that magazine spring where balls would just get caught in the back. Like, it's just not very well designed, or executed at least. This feels more like a Busby blaster, honestly. It's just like a cool proof of concept or a prototype, but Dart Zone produces really high quality stuff that's solid value. This does not fall in line with other Dart Zone products in my opinion. So to the vast majority of my viewers, I would not recommend the Liberator. However, this could be pretty cool for a cosplayer because it's a sawed-off shotgun. They stayed true to what a sawed-off shotgun should look like, so if you give it a cool paint job, it could look really cool. And there's a lot of really interesting textures in this stock here, and it looks neat. And you load it sort of like you would load a shotgun. There's a tube magazine running underneath the barrel, which is pretty cool. And it loads, and you feel cool like you're actually using a shotgun. Not really, but kind of. So for cosplayers and people that want to use something and they don't really care how hard they're shooting, this would be great because it's cheaper than most things that Nerf offers. But if you're a competitive Nerfer and you like the form factor, I would recommend checking out the rival Artemis. It has a much higher capacity, slam fire, and it shoots really hard. This is a great blaster for the size. Or its big brother, the Hades, if you want something bigger, but this is more comparable in size. So overall, pretty negative marks from me for both of these blasters, just incredibly underpowered. They feel less refined than most Dart Zone blasters, and especially compared to Nerf blasters. But hopefully I provided all the information you need to make an educated purchase decision for yourself. If you're interested in purchasing either of these, I'll put buy links in the description box below. That concludes this video review. Thanks so much for watching, bros, and as always, stay tactical.